2020 has been a very rough year for all of us. It's led us down some pretty dark holes, and I don't think that, it's possible for you to be able to survive without, depending on a better structure going forward. I think by now you all feel as though I'm a pretty virtuous person. I'm always honest. I never tell a lie. And I think I have some opportunities for you that will really, that are really going to be essential for you to survive going forward. Without these opportunities, I don't see how you're going to make it. Your business has been shut down, but because my business is essential, I've been able to keep it open. And so what I've decided to do is make you a stakeholder in my business. I'm actually working for you now. It's no longer about me, it's no longer about you. We're in this together. You don't have anything else to rely on anymore, so I don't see what other options you really have. And I think that this is something that is just progressive. It's what we need to build a stronger community in the future. If you join me now, I'm gonna give you guys each $1,500 just for signing up and being a stakeholder in my business. If you want to be involved in this conversation, if you want to have a say in things going forward, you need to become a stakeholder. You need to become a collective part of this community. You need to play a role. Otherwise, you can't be a part of it. There's no you, there's no them, there's no they, it's just us. And if you don't want to be a part of us, well, then we're gonna have to force your hand, and we really don't want to do that. So just comply. In the end, it all comes down to people and values. We need to shape a future that works for all of us by putting people first and empowering them. In its most pessimistic and dehumanized form, the fourth industrial revolution may indeed have the potential to robotize humanity and thus deprive us of our heart and soul. But as a complement to the best parts of human nature, creativity, empathy, stewardship, it can also lift humanity into a new collective and moral consciousness based on a shared sense of destiny.
I don't know how it will play out, because this crisis will be with us until we really have found a remedy.
We face the prospect of leaving a larger swath of humanity behind us.
So in Britain, in the United States, in other countries in Europe, it feels as though people are staging a mutiny. The crew are not with established governments and established leaders.
Which means to exercise here true global citizenship.
Many people across the world are saying that globalization has been managed, by folks like all of us.
So we will see definitively a lot of anger.
So we need to be extra careful, extra conscious.
What's the disruption that we most need to pay attention to?
AI technology. It is staggering. We are in the beginnings of this technology and the revolution.
Why not to make sure that we revolutionize, digitalize particularly our education system?
As one of the 1%, so what's your personal responsibility? How do you see that moving forward? How do you see your own responsibility moving forward?
I see the need for action. We have to prepare for a more angry world. And how to prepare? I see the need for a great reset.
We are responsible to deliver that. It will do well, because in the end they think it is for a better life for themselves.
And the time to act is now.
I'm doing this video not because I'm a conspiracy theorist, not because I'm trying to cause fear in your minds, but because I'm concerned. I'm concerned about 2021. Last year at this time, I created a video called the 2020 Financial Crisis. Thanks to you guys, it went viral. It received hundreds of thousands of views. Unfortunately, I do not think that that can happen again, at least not without your help. At the time I made the 2020 financial video, the banks were basically being bailed out on the daily basis by the Federal Reserve. Lending in our country and around the world was crumbling. It was falling apart. There's just too much debt. The financial system in and of itself has been broken for quite some time, long before President Trump ever came into office. He didn't fix it. Nobody was able to fix it. It was falling apart. I mentioned in that video that I thought the slightest black swan event would send the global economy into a spiral. As we headed into 2020, that's exactly what happened. The year turned out to be catastrophic to a lot of people. A lot of people lost their jobs, a lot of people lost their rights, a lot of people lost a lot of things. Families were torn apart, our social values were torn apart, we were put up against each other. For many people, they feel that in 2021, this will eventually blow over. There'll be a solution. The pandemic will go away, and with it, everything will return to normal. But nothing will ever return to normal. 2021 is going to be the draconian crisis. So a lot of you guys have heard about the Great Reset, a Great Reset that's being spun by New World Order. It's interesting because when you say to a lot of people that the New World Order is creating a Great Reset, a lot of them would say, that's a conspiracy theory, you're out of your mind, you're crazy. This conspiracy theory is just way blown out of proportion. It is actually not. There's nothing that's a conspiracy about it. In fact, it's a very open plan. It's a very incredible plan the way it is presented. I think the first thing that we need to do is pull apart what is New World Order. What does NWO stand for? Who are they? Who are they? Who is the New World Order? New World Order in and of itself is not a conspiracy theory. It is something that has been around for quite some time. Well, Woodrow Wilson was actually the first one to kind of coin New World Order. After World War I, he tried to establish what we called the League of Nations, which was ultimately a complete failure. But the League of Nations was to be the New World Order. New World Order is just referring to an organization of sorts that provides order to the global economy, to the global citizenship, to the global world, to unify all countries under one helm. That was the idea behind the League of Nations. And then we had another draconian mind trying to establish New World Order under his terms. And he was rather successful initially at really hitting the ground running with his New World Order. But it ultimately put us into World War II, because what other countries didn't want is to be controlled by this New World Order. That's why the League of Nations failed, and that's why the second individual failed. Today we have the United Nations, which is in and of itself a form of New World Order. That's the purpose of it. New World Order. For the betterment of humanity, for peace for all mankind. Order to the new world, the next new industrial revolution. It's plain and simple. It's not a conspiracy theory. It is a way of phrasing things to explain a group of elites. We also have another group called the World Economic Forum. Now this is a very interesting world order because it's probably one of the most powerful world orders. In fact, it is the most powerful world orders. And they have been put into power by people like you and I just pointed to me when I said you. And we accept their order. We've accepted their order for quite some time. And I think that for the most part, a large majority of humanity always will. Why? Because they're powerful. They're powerful, we look up to them, they're virtuous, as we think. The World Economic Forum is a group of CEOs that make up the largest global institutions in the world. There's not an institution that is not on their list that you wouldn't know. Even companies like Cargill and Tyson, for all of you farmers out there, are on their list as partners who get together on a yearly basis and make decisions on how you and I will live our lives socially, economically, what our opportunities will be. This is a group of elitists who sincerely believe that because they have been successful in establishing a multi-billion or multi-trillion dollar corporation, that they have an obligation to you, to mankind, to make choices for them, to help them have a better life. That is the World Economic Forum. That is their purpose. It wouldn't surprise you that many people in the World Economic Forum, many of the speakers are people like Bill Gates. The New World Order recently has been working on a Great Reset plan. Heading the conversation is Prince Charles. Does anybody else think that's odd? The most effective way that we can regain control over New World Order is to do it under the crown. I find it a little odd, personally. We are now talking about restructuring the entire world under the guidance of a crown. After all, progression is often going backwards when it comes to totalitarianism. I find it interesting that on their website, they call COVID an opportunity. The World Economic Forum says we must use it to secure the great capital G reset, capital R, that we so badly need. They so badly need it because the entire world's economy has been faltering for decades. While most of us have seen it as a disadvantage, this group of people actually feel that it is to their advantage that COVID exists, because with COVID, it has wiped out the global economy. With COVID, there has to be a great reset. With COVID, there is no other choice other than resetting the global economy. The question is this great reset such a bad thing? I think to answer that question, you have to understand what it is that they're actually trying to accomplish. What is the ultimate goal of this great reset? This new world order that they propose has three components to their agenda. The first one is to take our capitalism structure from shareholder corporations, a shareholder economy, and transition it to a stakeholder economy. In a stakeholder economy, there are no privileges. There's no need to go out and create a business. There's no need to produce. Basically, you are a stakeholder in the global economy and you have a right to everything that the global economy produces. In a shareholder economy, companies work for one reason: to benefit their shareholders. They increase the value of their corporation. They increase the value of their products. That is their entire purpose, their entire motivation. It's something that I have learned over the years is that ingenuity actually comes from private capitalism. Think about it. When you are serving a principal, your shareholders, and you're there to create value, you have to create products and services that somebody is willing to pay for. Whether those products and services are affordable to all, your end game is to create something that people are willing to pay for, that you're able to balance out the costs of that good or service and sell enough of it at a certain price point to be able to make your shareholders the maximum amount of profit. Now that also requires you as an executive to consider the rules of society. You have to play by the rules, you have to play by the laws that our society has put in place for you to play by. But you also have to consider the rules of ethics. You know, if you are an unethical corporation, ultimately what will end up happening is people will not want to buy your product, and therefore you're not going to generate the profits that are necessary for your shareholders. The other thing that you must constantly do is be progressive. You must constantly create a better service. You must constantly create a better product because you need to recycle your previous clients. And you're not going to do that if you're offering them the same iPhone every single year. So you constantly have to improve upon your technology. You constantly have to improve upon your services to be able to continue to generate the sales and generate the profits for your shareholders. The shareholder corporation is a very complex structure, one that requires a lot of different considerations. And it does involve considering the ethics of society. It does involve being a part of the community because you are trying to sell to that community and you need the community to be able to buy into your products and services. As a executive of a shareholder corporation, you are also an independent. You have the right to go out and donate to whatever charity or cause that you wish to donate to. You have the right to speak on the topics that you feel are most important to you. You have the right to do a lot of different things as long as you're providing an equitable return to your shareholders. And if you don't agree with your shareholders, you have the right to step down, you have the right to leave, you have the right to take a job with another corporation. You can be hired as a CEO for multiple corporations, just like most of us can go and apply for jobs at other corporations if we don't like our job or our employer. In a stakeholder corporation, the executive is no longer in charge of building assets for their principal. Instead of being driven by progress in services and goods and products that they're making, they're driven by what's best for humanity, what's best for the community. Now we are taking those elite businessmen and we are saying, you are now a legislator, you are now a tax receiver and a benefiter, you're an executive, and you're a jurist, because you are the one who is judging what is best for humanity and making the decisions. Their main focus is to take private income, private shareholders' money. You extort from your shareholders and reinvest it into society to foster their social objectives, because that's the virtuous thing to do. Now you have a corporation deciding what society should be. They have to determine what the rules are of society, what is acceptable in society, what is ethical in society. In a private shareholder corporation, they don't determine that. Society determines that, and they do what they can to be attractive to that society. Whereas in a stakeholder economy, the corporation makes those decisions. They decide what is best for society. They decide how to spend the shareholders' money back to the community. They decide what is acceptable in the community. And what's not acceptable in community, they don't support. What's not acceptable in the community, they don't publish on their platforms. They're the ones deciding how we perceive each other, how we perceive societal norms. The shareholder corporation, they don't have that much power, because what they have is a product and a corporation that they have to market to the community. But the biggest question that I think you need to ask yourself is, are these corporations, are these individuals virtuous? And if they are virtuous, whose virtues? Yours? Mine? Are they respecting your religious beliefs? Is that a part of this? Are they respecting your family, your heritage, where you've come from? Are they respecting your investments, your retirement accounts? Well, they aren't, because all of those things are independently yours. One has to ask at some point where true responsibility lies. Who is responsible for your family? Who's responsible for you? Who's responsible for the car accident you were in last week? Is that responsibility a social responsibility? Is society responsible for you? Are they responsible for your family? Did society cause that car accident? Or was it the driver that rammed you from behind? Or did you ram into the other driver? Who is ultimately responsible? Is responsibility truly shared amongst a community, or is responsibility independent? I think you have to answer that question before you can really understand whether or not a stakeholder economy makes any sense at all. The stakeholder corporation operates through political mechanisms, while the shareholder organization operates through market mechanisms. When you have a shareholder economy and you have private investment, private equity, private responsibilities, you are constantly having to adapt to society to keep your products on the shelves, to keep your services available to them. Society is the main driver there. Society is driving that corporation to success or driving that corporation to failure. Society is the judge. Society makes the decisions for the corporation, whether the corporation realizes it or not. But the corporation can also appeal to certain segments of society. It's not a collective society, because they can market themselves to one particular group if they want to, as long as it's within our laws of discrimination. A lot of what we feel we have an issue with is this feeling of this stakeholder corporation. Let me explain. For the betterment of humanity, the best thing we can do is subsidize animal factories to make food cheaper for all. That is a political mechanism. That is taking taxpayers' dollars, putting them into these corporations to lower the price of a product or a service. That's not a free market economy, but that is the economy that so many people have an issue with, take an issue with. Whereas in a free market that's driven by market mechanisms, what would happen to that corporation? Well, if people were unhappy with the way that animal factories worked, they would stop buying their meats from those factories. They'd start to spend more money buying it from independent farmers, farmers that they trust, farmers that they feel have humane practices. And I'm using farming as an example because it's something I understand and I can explain it to you better. Those farmers are driven by market mechanisms. They depend on the market making the choice to buy from them because they trust them better. They like the way that they raise their animals. These guys that are trying to operate off of market mechanisms, even today, can't do it because we already have a stakeholder mechanism in place that says bigger is better and we're going to subsidize it to make it cheaper. So this concept of a stakeholder versus a shareholder economy has already been slowly rolling out over the past several decades. Let's take the individual proprietor. The individual proprietor who must shut down their business and not accept proceeds to save humanity from a pandemic. Again, we have forced a lot of society into this stakeholder environment without them even realizing it. But what we are actually doing is telling the sole proprietor that their purpose is to protect mankind. Their purpose is to be a part of society. Their purpose is not to earn a profit. We're not leaving it up to the sole proprietor to choose what they do with their money, to choose what activities they support, what activities they don't support. We're not allowing the market to decide whether or not their business survives or fails. We're just dictating who is going to fail and how they're going to fail and why they're failing to protect society. At the end of the day, the only true form of a stakeholder economy is a form in which requires us to remove the rights and privileges of individuals' freedom. You are restricting freedom, whereas in a stockholder environment, a stockholder capitalist structure, where you are giving those individuals the right to go out and earn a profit, the right to go out and earn their money off of the market, and for the market to decide whether or not that business is essential to them or not. We're taking that market mechanism driven environment and we're turning it into one that requires consent of the masses to determine whether or not somebody is acting in good faith. We are taking the choice away from the market. We are taking the choice away from the consumer to dictate what happens. That's the only way a stakeholder economy actually works. One of the main components here that you have to understand about stockholder and stakeholder that's in the same paragraph of their agenda is that in order to make a stakeholder environment work, just to explain to you how political this environment is we must have stronger governments, stronger, more effective governments, stronger, more effective control, stronger, more effective communalism in order for the stakeholder environment to work. The concept of a stakeholder corporation is a cloak. That's all it is. It's a cloak to make you feel like you can trust these executives, that you can put these executives in the same type of power that you would put somebody in that you vote upon. Only you're not actually going to have that vote. These individuals are placed. These are placed individuals who will then have the say on what is acceptable to society and what is not acceptable to society. The second component to this Great Reset is equality and sustainability. When we think about the United States as an example, a country that has represented freedom around the world, a country that has led the world in freedom, in my opinion. Of course, I'm American, so I'm going to think that way. But here in the United States, when we came up with our Declaration of Independence, equality was actually a very, very big deal. And it is a very, very big deal in a true free society. You can't have a free society if people do not have equality. But what does that equality mean? And why do we have to have a new agenda of equality? Well, the old agenda of equality, the old description of equality said that we all had the equal opportunity, the right to a fair race. We could go out and compete in a marketplace and win over our clients. We could go out and compete for votes in a fair and acceptable environment to be able to be whoever we wanted to be. All we had to do was compete, and we all have that right to compete. Over the years, we have made sure that everybody, regardless of race, regardless of religion, regardless of gender, has a fair right and equal opportunity to compete. An equal opportunity to get out there and make something of themselves. That is equality. Equality is that equal right, that equal opportunity. You're the only one who can make something of that opportunity for yourself. But not anymore, because now we have the equal opportunity to outcome, which is a whole other perspective. This is a whole new thing. We all have the equal opportunity to outcome. So when we go out to compete in the marketplace, when we go out to compete for an education and try and get a job, we all have the right to an equal outcome. We could all make the same amount of money. We could all do the same things. Well, that means all things must be equal, right? All things must be the same. Well, that means we must not have cultural backgrounds. We must all be the same, one and the same. Now, you're probably thinking, I'm finally going to get that airplane I've always wanted, that private jet. But that's not exactly how this works, because equal opportunity to outcome does not mean equal opportunity. Because in order to have an equal outcome, we must limit the opportunities that are available to the commons, the communal public. Because we can't possibly have everybody being a CEO of these stakeholder corporations that are there to benefit the public. What we have to do is limit to the extent of what that opportunity means for that outcome. And once we figure out where we're going to limit those outcomes, we have a separate set of outcomes and circumstances for the commons than we do the elite. And this is the only way that this system works, because you still have to have people who are elite to the commons to lead the commons virtuously. Folks, in life, in general, there is no such thing as an equal opportunity to outcome. Equal opportunity is having the right to be able to go out and try. But it is your effort that creates the outcome. It is impossible to have an outcome without putting forth the effort. Yet for some reason, we have convinced a large swath of our population that they have an equal opportunity to outcome. You want a house? You know what? You get a house. You have a right to it. You have an equal opportunity to outcome. You don't have to earn that house. You don't have to pay a mortgage on it. I'm going to give you a house. It sounds really nice to a lot of people until you realize that you just destroyed the value of everybody who has worked for their home, has put forth the effort for their home. Because now it is not something that is earned and is put on a marketplace where people have to bid on it. It is something that is yours. You have a right to it. It's just take it. And who pays for it? Taxpayers. Right now in our economy, one of the biggest problems that we've had is overspending from governments and not a high enough tax base. We don't have a high enough tax base at all to be able to support the government spending, which is why we're in so much debt. Now, explain to me, if we take more money from the tax base that's already been beaten up and we redistribute that to the commons, I guess you would think in your minds, well, we're giving more taxes back to more people so we'd be able to increase our tax base again. But there is no value in what you're taxing them on because everybody has an equal opportunity to it. What is a house worth if you just have an opportunity to it and you don't have to pay for it? What is a house worth if you have to go through no effort to pay for it? Maybe that's a better way of putting it. Equal opportunity to outcome is probably the worst concept and the most unrealistic concept that I have ever heard an intelligent person speak. I'm sorry, that's just the way I feel. Now, this equal opportunity to outcome is important because it helps create sustainability. well, what is sustainability? What are we trying to achieve with sustainability? Because that's also a part of this. So when we want to be sustainable, we think about the future. What does the future entail? What do we need to have in the future? As a farmer, when you raise crops or you graze animals, you're constantly thinking about sustainability, or you should be, because if you don't, you're going to end up failing in the long run because you're going to run out of resources. You want to move your cattle from field to field so that they don't eat the grass down too much, so that the grass can stay healthy and grow back stronger, so it's there to feed your cows again. You need to make sure that you're doing regenerative practices with your soil so you don't erode your topsoil and have nothing left to grow within. That is sustainability, because you're planning a future based on needs that you will have in the future, and you're creating actions now to make sure that those resources are there for you in the future. That's sustainability. That's important. That's a very important thing. Sustainability is not a bad thing in and of itself. But when we get into a sustainable economy, now there triggers a different set of values, a different set of circumstances. Now we are projecting what it is in the future that we will need, that our children will need, that our children's children will need, and we're determining how our actions now will affect those people in the future, and we're operating based on the assumption that we know how that will happen in the future. I'll be honest with you, I don't have a crystal ball. I can't see into the future. I don't know what's going to happen in the future. But the elites, they do know what's going to happen in the future. They know enough about what's happening in the future that they can plan their business models for the future, and the technology that we will need in the future, the technology that we need to invest in and build now to be sustainable in the future. They know the answers to that. They know how to lead us down that road because they've seen the future. They have crystal balls that we do not have. But that's not true. Nobody can predict the future. Nobody has seen the future. Nobody knows what the future holds. But what we do know is that we can create a sustainable economy. We can create sustainable businesses by making people invest emotionally in a sustainable future, by investing emotionally in our goods and services for that future. Now, here's the thing. If in the future, solar power and energy costs of alternative energy are going to be so low and so accessible and so affordable to everybody, why do we need to restrain on fossil fuels now? That is not necessarily a principle of sustainability. It's not, you don't need fossil fuels in the future, so you don't have to restrain on using them right now to reach that future goal of sustainability. I was just playing devil's advocate on that one. But think about it this way. Back in the 1900s, everybody rode a horse to work. Everybody rode a horse to go to school, to teach, to, whatever it was, you rode a horse. If at that point in time we said that society will never progress and we must possess the answers for the future and make it sustainable for everybody, we would have put pastures in between buildings so that the horses would have a place to go and be able to graze. We would have built an infrastructure around the possibility that we will always need a horse to get somewhere in the future. But the truth is that you don't need a horse in the future because mankind has progressed. Mankind always progresses. Progressing is the sustainability of mankind. Our ability to constantly progress has constantly changed what our future holds for us, what it actually means. Never in the history of mankind have we ever relied on previous technology in our future. Think about 10 years ago versus where we are now, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. Go back 100 years and look at the technology from 100 years ago that has been sustainable for us into the future. Versus how much have we replaced over that time? How much has mankind changed? Now, you've been told by these people that they're scientists. Science tells us what's going to happen in the future, just like science used to tell us that it was okay to smoke. It was good for your health to smoke. Science has said a lot of things throughout history, but it has not ever predicted the future. Nothing has ever predicted the future. This notion that we can predict the future is incorrect. It is incorrect because we don't have that capacity. We don't have that capability. Now, I have met people who say that they've seen the future in dreams, but the future that they see is never the future that these elites are seeing, or these elites are saying that we should be seeing. A sustainable economy is nothing other than an investment back into these companies, back into these corporations for future leadership in the new world. It is the new world order. It is predetermining our future for us. I believe in sustainability. I believe in independent sustainability. I don't believe in being forced into the investment of somebody else's business model. But that also brings me to the third component of this Great Reset, and that is the Fourth Industrial Revolution. What is the Fourth Industrial Revolution? Well, the Fourth Industrial Revolution has already started. It started well before we even realized it was happening. The Fourth Industrial Revolution is artificial intelligence, it's robotics, it's these technologies that completely upset industries. For example, fake food. We now have synthetic food. You don't have to eat off the land anymore because we can make it. We can use science to make everything. We can use science to manipulate everything. We could even change the ingredients in our food. There is a computational medicine attorney on the USDA transition team. This is the future. We are going into a whole new age of technology that can drive our society, that can change the way we view each other, can change the way that we communicate with each other. It can remove thoughts of individuals that we don't want. It is truly a miraculous thing. And with this Fourth Industrial Revolution, we really don't need you. You're not needed. You really aren't needed because there's no point in having you. We only need the high level employees because technology can do the rest. Robotics can do the rest. Artificial intelligence can do the rest. My dad was a landscape architect for years, and he finally retired because they don't need landscape architects anymore. Like, the computer can do the design for them. Nobody needs that. You and I aren't needed anymore. And that creates a very, very, very big problem, which is why this entire reset is so important. If you don't need the middle class, if you don't need the lower class, what ends up happening is you have a dramatic income gap. It's kind of like the Edwardian times when you had these elite few people who lived a life of luxury, and then you just had the common people, the people with equal opportunity that couldn't ever do anything more than what they were doing. You see where this is going is we're going right back to where we were. But by going back to this system, they can better take care of us so that we don't revolt, so that we don't raise up against them because we don't like the fact that they're benefiting from everything and we're not. Because we are stakeholders and their entire purpose is to take care of us, we can trust in that virtue. This is what the Great Reset is. If you don't see that, then you're not thinking through all of these scenarios that thoroughly. You have to think this stuff through to understand it. You have to think through the consequences of what you're asking for. In the end, it all comes down to people and values. We need to shape a future that works for all of us by putting people first and empowering them. In its most pessimistic and dehumanized form, the Fourth Industrial Revolution may indeed have the potential to robotize humanity and thus deprive us of our heart and soul. But as a complement to the best parts of human nature, creativity, empathy, stewardship, it can also lift humanity into a new collective and moral consciousness based on a shared sense of destiny. The best component of the Fourth Industrial Revolution is the fact that they can program us. They can literally program us. They can choose what we see when we see it. They can, look at, for example, as a creator, and this is something that's come up in recent congressional hearings, they can go in and determine, what you're researching on your computer and what your next topic might be that you're going to be talking about and whether or not to promote your content or not promote it. They're ahead of the game. They already know what you're doing. They know what you're thinking. They know how to silence you. They know how to exploit you. It's truly amazing. It's amazing what they can do. My question to you is, what are you going to do about it? I can tell you how this unrolls. First, you've got the fear effect. Come to us, we'll take care of you. You'll be safe with us. There's a problem out there, but you can expect to be safe with us. Do you have any idea how many people will jump at the opportunity to give up their freedom for safety? You should read the 2010 Rockefeller report. It's a really interesting report, and it talks about this, just the willingness of a large percentage of society to give up their freedoms, to give up their individuality just for the sake of safety, to feel safe again. Destruction of self-sufficiency. If we destroy the previous capital market, the shareholder system, the economy where people save up money, invest to retire, the economy where people build a business to feed their family, if we destroy that concept, that availability, if we take away the businesses, and while we're at it, we take away the churches so that people can't rely on their church for support. Take away the concept of a family. You no longer can see your family. You can't rely on your family for support. We take away this old concept of capitalism, this old capital structure, so that nobody can rely on it anymore. How many people would say, I need something to rely on? Where else can they go? How many people, once you take away their support, what their concept is of an income, are going to be able to survive without reliance on something? You incentivize. I will give you $1,500 if you take this. I will give you food. I will give you these things if you follow me. I will give you reformations. If those things don't work, you could always isolate. Just say, you know what? You have a different opinion than everybody else, or you have a different opinion than I want everybody else to have. So I'm just going to shadow ban you. I'm kicking you off my platform. You don't belong as a part of the society because you're not conforming correctly. You're a danger to society. You're a threat to society. You isolate. You push them away. How many people don't want to be isolated? How many people will eventually cave just because they can't stand being isolated? When all else fails, and once you've convinced enough people, you enact martial law for the good of humanity. It's the virtuous thing to do. We must get control over the situation for all mankind. For all mankind. Interesting phrase. My question is, what are you doing about it? What are you doing to remove your reliance? What are you doing to replace your self-sufficiency from the currency system? I'm not talking about buying the Bitcoin. Those of you who have been caught up in this trap of cryptocurrencies, you need to look at the investors in the Bitcoin. There are whales out there buying this stuff up. What makes you think that that won't sell off just like everything else? If you feel like you have to get into a currency, I would suggest you get into something like gold. What are you doing to get yourself economic freedom, freedom from the economy? What are you doing to preserve your independence? What are you doing to protect your thought? Are you seeking information and finding specific information? Are you researching it? Are you looking at all sides of the argument? Or are you allowing yourself to go down rabbit holes that pop up on social media and be influenced by what it is that a computer algorithm says you need to be influenced by? What are you doing to protect your kids? Have you taken your kids out of in-person instruction where there is an independent instructor, and have you put them into the virtual classroom? Or are you teaching your kids? Are you teaching your kids values? Are you teaching your kids morals? Are you teaching your kids ethics? Are you teaching your kids how to work? Are you teaching your kids trial and outcome? Or are you putting your kids into programming that says they have equal opportunity to outcome? What are you doing about this? At the end of the day, there will be people who don't comply with this great reset. What are you doing about it?